Hello and welcome to 4.9, solving polynomial inequalities. So we spent a lot of time factoring down polynomials and finding solutions for when they have those equals, okay? So now we're going to look at some inequalities. And when we look at the inequalities, we start off by doing the same thing that we've been doing. We do the factoring, and then we get those solutions, except then we have to test points to determine when is it going to be greater than 0 or when is it going to be less than 0. But the starting part is exactly the same. Now, just like always with inequalities, okay, if you have the or equal to line, right, that's a closed circle on your graph. If you have just a greater than or just a less than, then you have an open circle. Also, with these, it's really important to remember that they have to be set with 0. So one side of your inequality will have to be 0. Now, on the 3 examples we're going to go over today, they're all already that way. But if you come up to one where where it doesn't have 0 on the one side, then you want to make sure that you get it with 0 on one side. So let's take a look here. Just like we would before, we're going to factor out a y, and this gives us y times y minus 3 is less than or equal to 0. So if we were to just do our normal solutions, right, this would be 0 and 3. So because this is an or equals to problem, we're going to put a closed circle at 3 and a closed circle at 0. Okay, now I want to test and figure out when is this positive and when is this negative to determine where my correct answers are at. So that means I need to pick a point that falls into each one of these to then test. So I could do -1 for y, and that'd be -1 times -1 minus 3. -1 minus 3, so -1 times a -4, which is +4. So those values from here over are positive. I pick one in the middle here, let's say 1. So that'd be 1 times 1 minus 3 would be 1 times a -2, which is a -2. So that goes a negative there. And then we have, let's say 4 that we pick over here. 4 times 4 minus 3 would be 4 times 1, which is a +4, so I'm looking at positive. So now I know where to graph because I'm looking at when will this be less than 0. So where it's less than 0 is where it's negative. So that falls between here and there. So this is what my graph looks like. My answer is going to be, right, the solution set is y such that 0 is less than or equal to y, which is less than or equal to 3. Okay, on to number 2, same idea, factor just like we would before. So pull a y out, you're left with y squared minus 16 is greater than or equal to 0. Difference of perfect squares would give us y plus 4 and y minus 4. So again, we go through just like if we were just solving it. So this would be 0, -4, and +4. So I'm going to put my closed circles, right, because it's an or equal to. So we've got -4, 0, and 4. And now I'm just going to test 1 in each one of these 4 spots. So if I start with -5, so we could do -5 times a -5 plus 4 times a -5 minus 4 would be -5 times a -1 times a -9, which would give us a -45, so this is minus. Then my next section, let's say we pick -2, so we do -2 times -2 plus 4 times a -2 minus 4. So this would be -2 times 2 times a -6, which gives us a positive 24 because you have the negative and the negative, which gives you a positive. Then here, okay, we can pick another point. So let's say we pick 1. So this would be 1 times 1 plus 4 times 1 minus 4. So 1 times 5 times a -3, which would be a -15. And then if we pick one over here, 5 times 5 plus 4 times 5 minus 4 is going to be 5 times 9 times 1, which is going to be a positive 45. So this is positive. So now what we have to do is look and say, okay, well, what is it asking for? It's asking for when is that going to be greater than or equal to 0. So where is it greater than or equal to 0? Well, my graph, right, would have this to here, and then I would have this going all the way over here to infinity, right? So when I go to write this solution out, it would be, right, my solution set is y such that, well, I can have between -4 and 0, so -4 is less than or equal to y, which is less than or equal to 0. Or you could have x is greater than or equal to 4. Right? Because greater than or equal to 4 covers everything that way. And that's what we need to have. Okay? So, oops, why did I write x, right? We've been using y. So let's put our y in there. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, and then last but not least, number 3 down here. Okay, this is 4k squared minus 8k is greater than 0. Same thing we've been doing, factor it just like we would anything else. And that leaves us with k minus 2 has to be greater than 0. So then, right, k, if we were to solve this normally, right, would be 0 and 2. So this is not an or equal to, so these have to be open circles. So we put an open circle at 0, and we put an open circle at 2, and then I need to test 1 in each one of these regions. So we can do, let's see here, -1, so 4 times a -1 times a -1 minus 2 would be a -4 times a -3, which is a positive 12, so this is positive. We can test 1 right here, so 4 times 1 times 1 minus 2 is going to give me 4 times a -1, which is a -4. And then on the other side, we could pick 3. So 4 times 3 times 3 minus 2 gives me 4 times 3 times 1, which is 12, which gives us positive. So then we have to look at this and say, okay, I need to know when, right, k, where this expression is going to be greater than 0, so my positives. So my graph, right, this is going to be positive from here all the way to -infinity. And it's going to be positive from here all the way up here to positive infinity. So how do we write that out in our solution set? Well, we're talking about k. So this is k such that k is less than 0 or k is greater than 2. Now, if you're in my class, right, you'll notice that your homework starts on the back here, and I did give you the graphs, the number lines for you guys to write them out. One of the other things that you'll notice, right, plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, right? These should be those change points, and those become really important later on. I do still expect you to check and make sure, though, that you've done everything correctly by checking each point. So good luck on your homework, and have a wonderful night.